The 2022 NFL Draft is now less than 2 weeks away. To celebrate here on Blue Friday, Nick Lee and I are going to be conducting a 7-round Seahawks mock draft that would surely rock the NFL world. We're going to have a blast doing this here on our latest installment of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12s. This is Corbin Smith, your host for Locked On Seahawks. Joining me for our Blue Friday episode, my co-host Nick Lee. Thanks for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. Before we get to a jam-packed 7-round mock draft, got to hand out our winner. This week, we had a contest to win a Quandre Diggs uniform, jersey number 6, either in navy and white. You get to pick one of those two colors. We have a winner thanks to all 594 entrants for the contest. Our winner, Braden Growrud. If I mispronounced your name, my apologies. But Braden Growrud, you are the winner. Make sure to contact us with a direct message, locked_Seahawks, to claim your prize. We'll also be putting a post up congratulating you on your victory. You're going to be getting a Quandre Diggs jersey, either a blue one or a white one. So again, hit us up, locked_Seahawks. Thanks to all of our nearly 600 entrants for taking part in this contest. Let's get to today's mock draft. And Nick, this was something that a lot of our listeners were asking about after Wednesday's show. We had 3 different Locked On hosts, the Packers, Jaguars, as well as the Saints, make pitches to trade for Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf. And a number of our listeners, even though most of them said we don't want this to happen, we're just curious. What would the draft play out like if you accepted one of those offers and then conducted a 7-round mock draft? So after looking at all the offers, you and I decided, and Rob Rang agreed with us as well on the show on Wednesday, that the Jaguars gave the best deal. Pick 33, pick 65, and pick 70 in exchange for DK Metcalf. 3 picks on day 2 in this year's draft. That gives the Seahawks 5 picks in the second and third round, as well as the number 9 overall pick. And so we've already made that trade. We've put it into our draft network mock simulation. We can only make one more trade. That is the only rule for today's mock draft. So without further ado, let's get to it. We can see that we are on the clock at pick number 1 or pick number 9. And Nick, you and I talked about this before the show, and I think that there is a strong possibility that this is going to happen. The New Orleans Saints want to get a quarterback. That has to be their rationale for getting a second first rounder, so that they can package those together to move up. In this particular mock draft, they already offered us a first, a third, and a future second. I would like to try to get both of those first-round picks.
Yeah, I mean, if you're obviously the need for the Saints is there, and maybe, I don't know if desperation is the right word, but certainly going to play to their desire to move up to get that quarterback. Looks like it probably will be Kenny Pickett, I imagine, in this scenario. Perhaps you definitely want to get as many day 1, day 2 picks as possible. So this is definitely something worth exploring. And I don't think that John Schneider will be able to help himself, but accept something like this to move down a couple slots and recoup more picks, especially on day 2.
I look at the players that are still available. Obviously, Ahmad Gardner, there's a temptation there because that guy is an elite talent. Yeah. Jermaine Johnson is still on the board. Derek Stingley is still on the board. Jameson Williams. You've got Jordan Davis, Trevor Penning. I think if you've got that many players there, you at least have to consider. So let's see what we can do with the Saints. Because, again, they offered us a first, third, and a future second. Maybe that would be a trade I'd be willing to do, but I want to get those 2 first-round picks.
Definitely.
And so let's see if we can work this out with the Saints. So we'll give pick 9. We get the 2 first-rounders. Right now, offer acceptance is very low. So we're going to have to throw something else in there to sweeten the pot.
I figured it was probably going to be that way. Maybe
we do have a bunch of second and third rounders from that Jaguars trade that we made. But I think if we trade pick 109, and honestly, I think a future 7th or a future 6th even to really sweeten the pot. That didn't seem to do much for them as far as
there you go.
the trade. But giving up the 4th, I don't know if they'll accept this or not. Let's see if they will, though. Let's see if we can get those 2 first-rounders. They accepted.
All right.
So without further ado, let's see where we can go here. We now have made our 1 trade, so we can't make any more trades. We're going to get offers, but we're on the clock here at pick 16. All right, Nick, this is where it gets interesting. We lost out on several players that we may have had interest. This is the risk with trading down. Johnson, Gardner, Stingley, Davis, they're all gone. But we do have a tackle in Trevor Penning. We get an interior defensive lineman in Devontae Wyatt. Desmond Ridder, if we want to go quarterback. Kenny Pickett is still there. Tyler Linderbaum, the center that you and I both love. Devin Lloyd, the linebacker from Utah. There's a lot of talent still on the board here.
Yeah, I think the need for their tackle. I think tackle is a huge need. I know I've been pounding the table for center, but as far as how normally in a normal situation, yes, I think you might want to go center, but I just think the need is so dire at both tackle spots. Penning is very, very tempting there, especially as you have a pick later coming up. You can really almost have 2 of these guys right now on the board. Only a couple.
I think we have to pick Penning here because at 16, I think there's good value. I would not take him at number 9, but he's an incredible athlete that has a lot of upside. And like you mentioned, they need tackles. They have 3 of them on the roster right now with a combined 5 NFL starts. So they absolutely need to bring in some talent to replenish. To me, this isn't even a discussion. I think we have to take Penning because he's not going to be there at 19. He's
6'7", long, lengthy, powerful. I like it.
So let's do it. Let's get a tackle to protect whoever the quarterback is going to be. And again, we can't take any of these other offers. That was one rule we put in. We can make 1 trade. We already did that. So we're back on the clock now, Nick. And you look at the couple players that were picked, Devontae Wyatt and Zion Johnson. So we could still upgrade our line at the center position with Tyler Linderbaum. We could get Desmond Ridder or Kenny Pickett. We can draft Devin Lloyd to bolster the linebacking core, George Karlaftis if you want an edge. I know they just signed Geno Smith, but that is not something that should deter you from taking a quarterback.
Oh, heck no.
I don't think if you don't take Desmond Ridder or Kenny Pickett here, I have a feeling at pick 40, we might not be able to get any of the top 5 quarterbacks.
Yeah. You might not even get Sam Howell at 40. Who knows? So of those 2, I'm probably leaning towards Desmond Ridder, but in that in-between, I agree that you'll probably lose a chance to really feel good about a possible franchise quarterback in this draft if you pass up on a quarterback here. So even though it might be a, quote, reach for some people with Ridder, I don't think it really is. You got to go with what you need, and you get your franchise tackle and perhaps at least a shot at a franchise quarterback in the same first round. Sign me up.
Yeah, I would be tempted to pick Linderbaum here just to really meet up that offensive line. Yeah. But I think Ritter's a quarterback they like. Yeah. They just had a meeting with him. I think we got to take him.
He's got all the tools, doesn't turn the ball over. He's won at the college level. Yeah, it's hard to argue against that for sure.
So if the Seahawks can get out of the first round and they are able to draft their tackle of the future in Trevor Penning and also get their potential quarterback of the future in Desmond Ridder, you have to like that setup. I mean, you're getting 2 of the most important positions filled long-term. So I like those first 2 picks. We're going to get to our second and third round, and I'll tell you, it's going to be busy. We've got, I believe, 5 picks in the second and third round after acquiring those 3 selections in exchange for DK Metcalf from the Jaguars. So we get a jam-packed next second and third round coming up here in a moment. This mock draft here on Locked On Seahawks is brought to you by betonline.net. BetOnline.net is your number 1 source for all your betting, stats, and sports information needs. Find all of the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of the Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sporting and wagering informational needs, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. You're listening to the Locked On Seahawks podcast, Blue Friday edition. We are now less than 2 weeks away from the 2022 NFL Draft. So we are conducting our latest 7-round mock draft. with a major twist. Wednesday, we got some trade offers for DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. We decided at the urging of a number of listeners to see what that would play out like on draft weekend if the Seahawks made one of those trades. We got 3 day 2 selections from the Jaguars in exchange for DK Metcalf. And now, Nick, we are on the clock. 4 of these 5 picks that we are going to be making here came from other teams and a chance to replenish our roster. You look at what's still on the board, some really intriguing names. I already know who I want to pick here. I don't even need to scroll down at pick number 33. There's one name that jumps out to me.
Let me guess. His initials are BM.
Yes, we need to add a BM to the Seahawks defense.
Boye Mafe, I know he's your boy. He's your guy. I would have no qualms with that either, just to be devil's advocate. A guy like Quay Walker, a solid linebacker at Georgia. You can't really go wrong picking, the top 5 defenders from Georgia last year, or top 6 or 7 even. So you would feel an immediate need at linebacker there, and pairing him with Jordan Brooks would be, I think, an awesome pair. So I'm kind of leaning. I'm probably gonna go on the easy side and go Boye Mafe too. The meteoric rise, all the tools are there. Clearly not a polished product, but man, as far as ceiling goes for edge rushers in this draft, he's got to be has one of the highest ceilings.
If it was a little later, I would be thinking about David Ojabo for Michigan. He's coming off the Achilles injury, might not play this year, but could have been a top 5 pick before that injury. But I think you've got to go with Mafe here. The Seahawks need a prolific pass rusher off the edge. I think this kid is just scratching the surface of his potential. So let's do it. Plus, Mafe just visited with the Seahawks. So they're clearly interested in him. Okay. So that was pick 33. So now we're back on the clock at pick 40. It slipped my mind that Seahawks had a pick from the Jaguars. So we just picked Mafe. Now we have pick 40 and 41 here, Nick. Looking at the board, you mentioned Quay Walker. I think Quay Walker could make a lot of sense here as your replacement for Bobby Wagner to play next to Jordan Brooks. I think he would be an exciting addition here. Nakobe Dean is a really darn good linebacker, too. A little undersized. That's my concern with him going to a 3-4. Is he going to have enough bulk to be able to play that middle linebacker position? But man, is he a player. Both those Georgia linebackers could make sense here. And then scrolling down the board, if we wanted another rusher, Ebiketie still there. Tariq Woolen at cornerback. There are plenty of options out here for us.
And we got to remember, we have 2 picks right here. There's 2 straight picks. So you can pretty much pick 2 guys off this board. I'm a big fan of Quay Walker. I think he's got he's will linebacker traits, in run and chase, good, solid run defender. And what I really like is that he was one of the leaders, one of the communicators on that just star-studded championship defense for Georgia. He was one of the leaders and one of the guys directing traffic. So I think that's a huge trait for him. So he would be one of my picks. I know you like Breece Hall, the running back out of Iowa State as well. Getting a guy like him that can do a little bit of everything, especially as a hedge with you got Rashad Penny and Chris Carson on short deals now after this year.
I cannot get myself to draft a running back this early though this year. I love my running back.
I know. And the pitchforks would be out, but he's a guy, maybe we get lucky and he falls, but so Quay Walker probably be number 1. Tyler Smith is an intriguing interior lineman. And I know we got I think I saw a couple. Yeah, Tariq Woolen is another guy I'm really excited for. He's what I like to call toolsy, very toolsy corner. So
if I had worries me in the second round.
Yeah.
Because you watch the film, there's a lot of polishing that needs to be done. But man, he's got the traits. I actually, I'm torn here. I think we got to pick a Georgia linebacker. Quay Walker is not viewed as highly as Nakobe Dean in most draft circles, but I just think he's a better fit for a 3-4. Personally,
I agree. Yeah.
I think we do that here. Let's pick Quay Walker and let's get another linebacker to add to the mix.
Oh, Seahawks are drafting linebackers again.
It's a need. I mean, there's no question about it. You just lost
a
perennial all-pro in Bobby Wagner. You need somebody else to be a running mate with Jordan Brooks. We got that. And we're right back on the clock. Again, we can't make a second trade, in part because we did this for time constraints. But I think now that we've got our linebacker, we've been able to go out and add a few other pieces. We got a pass rusher. We got our quarterback. We got a tackle. We lost DK Metcalf. And so I think at this point, I think we pick a guy the Seahawks have already shown interest in that's 6'5" and ran in the 4.3s. Very similar athletic profile, not as big as DK Metcalf. He's not 230 plus pounds, but Christian Watson from North Dakota State, I think would make a lot of sense here.
You know what? I was so into draft mode, I completely forgot that we have to replace DK Metcalf somehow. Yes, he's got the size. Obviously with the small school stuff, it's a bit.
I'm worried if we don't pick him now, even though we're going to be back on the clock here soon. There's enough of a gap there. I don't think he's going to be there.
Yeah, he's got great ball skills. Good, he's good yak for his size. Good yak potential. I think that's a solid pick for sure.
Yeah, we've got to pick a receiver now that we've traded one away, and Watson is definitely a guy the Seahawks have had interest in. So we get Walker, we get Watson. We'll be back on the clock again at pick 65, and then we're going to turn around and be on the clock again at 70. So that's the plus side. We get a lot of picks in the meat of the draft in round 2 and round 3. And, of course, we can't take any of these trade offers. But here at pick 65, we've addressed tackle, we've addressed quarterback, edge, receiver, linebacker. We haven't gotten a corner. If we want to get another tackle, I think it could make some sense here potentially. Travis Jones is an interior defensive lineman that I love. I think at pick 70 could make some sense. He's a good fit in either 3-4 or 4-3 schemes. If we want to go running back, the top 2 guys are still there. I really like Breece Hall, so that might make sense here now at pick 65. And there's a couple other intriguing players on here. If you want to go linebacker again, you have Darian Beavers. We got a couple edges. Drake Jackson. We got some tight ends on the board. Abraham Lucas is still there. I think that's repetitive with Trevor Penning, though, personally.
Yeah.
I would rather draft maybe a little bit more of an athletic tackle that I can – because I don't know that Trevor Penning can play left tackle in the NFL. Right. So maybe you get another hedge there. I'm actually thinking here you either take a running back, Travis Jones, the defensive tackle out of UConn, or I know he's not listed high on this particular draft board, but Penn State tackle Rasheed Walker, I think, is a natural left tackle in this draft class.
Yeah, he's a guy I know you're high on. And this, I'd say about 70 is probably where some people do have him. I've seen him go up. And
we could take the risk. We could try to wait till 70 if we wanted to, because he's way down on the draft board here.
I think that's probably smart. I think waiting till 70 for him, because that's a great pick at 70, though. I agree. If he goes, I'm assuming he'll fall that far. Just what was that, four teams in between picks. I agree. Running back is probably a good one. To play devil's advocate, I know
I'm just leaning Travis Jones right now, to be honest with you.
Right? Yeah. I think that this is a good area to shore up the trench as well. Anytime you can do that, I think is a solid one. So Travis Jones is I wouldn't be mad at that at all. Just get another guy you can develop, because you also
I like that. Yeah, Al Woods is not getting any younger. You're going to have them, and Poona Ford's a free agent next year. So let's add a guy that I think will be able to play for them right away
in the future for sure.
Okay, so we're going to be back on the clock at 70, and look, none of the players we were looking at got picked. So we actually have pick 72 coming up in a moment. I think we can still wait on Rasheed Walker till 72. The question is, who do you want to pick between them? Because there are a few other edge guys we could look at. I know we picked Boye Mafe earlier, but I think Drake Jackson or Nick Bonito, they could use 2 of them. When you have these kind of draft picks, why not?
Yeah, I really think they need to double up on a premium position like edge or tackle. So this is certainly an area. I know not everyone is as high on Kingsley Agabari from South Carolina. He's more of a developmental guy. I think Drake Jackson is a bit more ready now than Kingsley would be. So I would probably go.
I just think he fits their scheme better. He's going to be an overhang rusher.
And Pete Carroll likes those USC guys. So even if he has no connections to them whatsoever besides USC.
I think we double up here. Let's get Drake Jackson, who I think has enough size he can play defensive end too in their base fronts. Yeah,
a little versatility there. I really do think either tackle or edge or both, you got to double up on one of those for sure.
So now the question we got to ask ourselves, again, Draft Network, they've got their viewpoints. I think Rasheed Walker is going to go in the early to mid 3rd round probably. He might even sneak into the 2nd. He's an athletic tackle. There are some people that question if he can play left tackle. I am not in that group. I don't think he lasts to pick 109, which would be the next time we're on the board.
It's a big gap, yeah.
I think that Trevor Penning, as athletic as he is, I think he's probably a right tackle in the league, at least to start off. I think that it would behoove you to add a player like Rasheed Walker, who's been a 3-year starter in the Big Ten, going against a ton of stud pass rushers. To me, this is where you pick him.
Yeah, I mean, he's going against Michigan and Ohio State guys. This is a good spot for him. And the Seahawks are
practices.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and when you double up on edge and tackle, you could do worse than getting two guys on each side of those. So, I'm for this pick too. He's got great hands. He's powerful. He's gone up against elite competition. I think that's a solid pick.
I just think it really checks off the box. You get two guys that I think fit their scheme, but you get a guy that can play left tackle. I think both of them could potentially play there. I think Penning is going to be a nice fit at right tackle. So you could have your bookends for the next several years.
That would be amazing.
Obviously, we had to trade our 4th round pick as part of the deal moving back. So we have a very large gap here. So we would not have been able to get Rasheed Walker.
No.
And so while we are waiting here for our day 3 selections, we only got a couple of them here. But while we're waiting, if you're like me and you're struggling to stick with your New Year's resolution, you need to try Built Bar. They're absolutely delicious, including Built Bar Puffs covered in 100% chocolate. It's a protein-infused marshmallow, a marshmallow on steroids, incredible flavors, including banana cream pie, which is my personal favorite. I can eat 2 or 3 of them in one sitting. And then you've got your regular Built Bars as well. Peanut butter brownie, salted caramel, orange cream. They come out with new delicious flavors every single month. So make sure to check out Built.com and see what they're cooking up this month. Under 200 calories, less than 5 net carbs, 17 grams of protein. It's the perfect pre-workout, post-workout, or just general snack to avoid candy bars that have a lot more sugar and obviously don't have the protein and other health benefits that you're going to find with Built Bar. Make sure to check out Built.com and enter in the code LOCK15 to get 15% off your next order. That's Built.com. Enter in the code LOCK15 for 15% off your next order. All right, Nick, we're continuing our Blue Friday 7-round mock draft. We are now well into day 3. One of the downsides of making a trade back with the Saints to get 2 first-rounders is that we had to give up our 4th-round pick. So there's a huge gap from pick 72 all the way to pick 152. We get back-to-back selections, though. So you know how this goes. Looking at the list, players that are available, we have not picked a corner yet at this point. I'm already seeing one that immediately jumps out to me that I would be drafting in a heartbeat. But we haven't picked a corner. We haven't picked a running back. There's another edge if we wanted to go there. There's a center prospect, a few center prospects available. So we have a lot of options here, and we get to pick 2 guys in a row.
Yeah, I know you like Hassan Haskins, running back from Michigan. I think that's a good pick. I think with how many running backs we've seen popped up here, this is a good spot. This is, I think, a spot where you can find some decent running back talent, and you don't get the pitchforks at the VMAC. I think that this is a good happy medium for that, where you don't have such a drop off in talent to where you're just kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel. So Hassan Haskins, I think, is a solid pick. Sincere McCormick, I've also liked. I've watched some of his film and a good athlete. So one of those 2 guys. Donovan West is another guy, an interior lineman who has center potential, is a guy I'm looking at as well. Just I think that you really got to address that center position. I've been hammering that home all off season.
And I actually have a prospect that I personally like better at center. There's actually 2 of them here that might be available to the Seahawks. Luke Fortner from Kentucky is still on the board. I'm scrolling down to see if Cam Jurgens, he might have been picked at this point. I don't see him on our list.
Yeah, might have.
Maybe I skipped over him, but he might have been selected already at this point. But Luke Fortner, I actually am higher on at this point than Donovan West. I would be fine with either one of them, but this is going to be the running back coach in me speaking. I just think at this point, if you can get Haskins at pick 152, 228-pound battering ram, sign me up. I think that's a natural replacement for Chris Carson, whether that's this year or next year. I think that he is your battering ram that you can team up with Rashad Penny.
Yeah, because keep in mind, both Penny and Carson are set to be gone next year. So your running back.
This guy can be a workhorse.
He can be. I just like, and I know we might put too much stock in competition, but he has run into some pretty darn good defenses in the Big Ten, and he's some big bodies, some beefy boys over there in the Midwest, and I think that bodes well. So I'm a huge fan of doing picking Haskins there, and I'm kind of leaning towards getting Fortner here. Just you got to get a guy who can at least compete with Blythe and perhaps be a guy that you can develop behind him and get him to be that franchise center.
Yeah, and some of our listeners will probably be watching like, we haven't gotten a corner yet. Yeah, we are aware of that. But the Seahawks might feel more comfortable with their corner group than they do some of these other spots. And I think I tend to agree with you. I just don't know that Austin Blythe is your long-term guy at center. And I think Luke Fortner in the 5th round, even Donovan West in the 5th round, I think both those guys, that's good value. I think they could be off the board end of day 2, early day 3. So they might not even be available at this juncture. I vote Fortner because he's been playing in the SEC, and he was a starter for nearly 40 games. He plays bigger than his size. He's an engineering graduate, so he's smart. To me, he's got to be the pick here.
Yeah, Kentucky doesn't take stupid students. That's a pretty decent school academically. So, my tiebreaker is competition. What kind of competition did you face? And the Pac-12
he was much more durable than West was too.
That too, yeah. And I think he looks more center-y than Donovan West. And
he looks like a prototypical center now. Yeah. Making that selection, I was leaning towards Jalen Watson from Wazoo to keep him in the Pacific Northwest, but I just can't skip over the possible opportunity there to get a guy that I think could be a long-term starting center that you get on day 3. So we've got this really long gap here. We do have a 7th round pick, 229. This will be the last time that we are on the clock, I believe. And per our own rules, we can't make a trade to add another pick. So we've pretty much covered all the bases. We haven't got a corner, safety, or tight end. I'll tell you what, Nick, if this plays out this way and they can get a couple of these guys I see on the board right now in the 7th round, I won't care if they didn't draft a corner early. I am a big fan of Matt Hankins, and he's a guy that is not getting talked about in the pre-draft process. But you know me and my Iowa players, they are ready to go when they come into the NFL. That program does such a great job. And you watch the film, and he's just steady. He's reliable, kind of a skinny corner, but he plays more physical than you'd think. He's got good ball skills. He's just kind of a guy that's just been hovering under the radar. I like him. Demarion Williams, I think, could be a really good slot in the NFL. I don't know that this is big of a need for the Seahawks. And Kyler McMichael fits the size and length stuff the Seahawks have always liked. I personally would go with Hankins of those guys, but I know you could go with any of those 3 players.
Yeah, I think the universe is telling us we need to take a corner here. 3 of the top 4 guys left on the board. It looks like our corners as far as I can see. Yeah. And I know people will bellyache because you've seen a lot of mocks now about the Seahawks taking Sauce Gardner, and then here we are in round 7 without a cornerback in this one. It's quite different, but I do think the Seahawks feel pretty good about where they're at. I don't think it's as dire of a need as maybe other people are making it out to be, especially when you have tackle, center, quarterback, big needs out there. But right now the board's kind of breaking to where the cornerback is. I like McMichael's length and the measurables. I agree. Iowa is one of those programs where they either recruit or develop overachievers and just smart guys that have a high football IQ. And I think that's just an excellent staff. So that's another tiebreaker for me. If I'm torn between a couple of guys, which of these programs is better at preparing guys to be a pro? And Iowa stands out as one of those that's consistently overachieving. They don't often get those blue chip 5-star guys that other guys in their own conference are getting, and then they line up and beat those guys on a consistent basis. So Hankins is a guy I think that if he fits that mold, certainly. And look, 7th round, you're not looking for a perennial all pro. Let's be real. Some of these guys don't even make the team. I know we've been kind of spoiled.
Matt Hankins could maybe start in the NFL.
Oh yeah, 100%. This is a value pick for him for sure. I'm just saying that there's don't be careful with expectations here at 7th round. But Hankins is a guy where if you have to pick a 7th rounder who you think that could eventually develop into a starter, Hankins is a guy I think that you got to pick.
I think that we got to go with the Iowa kid here. I think that him and McMichael, there'd be a little bit of a discussion in the draft room, but Hankins has length. So I like that pick to wrap up our draft. We're going to have a minute here to look at the draft as a whole and what it might look like if the Seahawks trade DK Metcalf. Again, I think you and I would both agree this is not what we think will happen, and we don't want to necessarily do it.
Yes.
Look at the amount of draft capital that we had. Look at the picks that we reeled in. First round, we get Trevor Penning. We got a future, maybe a potential Pro Bowler or even All-Pro tackle. He's got that kind of athleticism and upside. Desmond Ridder, we hope, can be our quarterback of the future. We get him at 19. Boye Mafe at 33 is just coming into his own, an incredible athlete off the edge. Quay Walker didn't play a lot at Georgia because Georgia kicks out like 4 linebackers for the NFL draft every year, but he's a darn good player. We get a receiver to help replace Metcalf and Christian Watson, who's 6'5", ran a 4.36. So he's got the speed and he's got the size. Travis Jones, the heir apparent for Al Woods, probably can play some meaningful snaps for you right away. We get him at 65. Another edge in Drake Jackson. Rasheed Walker, we get a more athletic tackle. Maybe not more athletic, but a guy that I think fits the left side potentially better than Trevor Penning. You might have your 2 bookends. Hassan Haskins, the running back out of Michigan. We get a center that might be able to compete with Austin Blythe for snaps day 1 in Luke Fortner. And we get an intriguing corner that is well prepared, playing at Iowa, in Matt Hankins. Just look at the number of picks that we ended up with. 11 selections, and we had all but 3 of them inside the top 72. And we were able to really rebuild and reload this team with a lot of young talent.
I can see John Schneider is like that Vince McMahon meme where he's like, falling back in his chair with seeing all these picks coming in. What I really like about this is you hit 2 of the premium positions that you need big time in edge and tackle twice. I think that's a really underrated part because best case scenario, you found both your future starting tackles. I know that's a little bit of Disney wishful thinking maybe, but that's something where you can start. And obviously Desmond Ridder, I have a higher opinion of him than like a Kenny Pickett or even Matt Corral. I think those 2 are pretty comparable, but I really like Desmond Ridder's traits, and he's just a winner and an athlete. So you got your franchise best case scenario, you got your franchise quarterback, both tackles, you got depth at edge, you got maybe your heir apparent to Bobby Wagner, at least a good Batman and Robin with Jordan Brooks. And you maybe have a guy who has a lot of upside at corner, Hankins, Iowa kid in the 7th round. I overall, you hit a lot of points. We hit a lot of needs. This is not a team this doesn't look like a roster with that draft class that's going 3-14.
No, and you're hoping that even if you hit on 60, 70%, I know most drafts you're lucky if you hit on half, but like when you have that kind of capital.
Especially Seattle.
Yeah. When you have that kind of capital, though, if you have 8 picks in the top 72, you better hit on most of those, especially in a draft class that has great depth at a number of positions of need, like edge. I think the tackle group is solid. The linebacking depth is fantastic. The corner depth, there's a reason you can get a guy like Matt Hankins maybe in the 6th or 7th round. Other years, he might be an early day 3 selection, but there's a lot of depth there. You have to take advantage of that. So we've talked about it time and time again. This is a critical draft for John Schneider and Pete Carroll. They've got to knock it out of the park. And if they added that many picks, there's no excuse. You better get some difference makers.
Their jobs are on the line.
Like guys that can start on day 1. And I think we did that with this mock.
I do too, and I think their jobs are on the line with this draft. I think this is the make or break draft. Well, at least especially for John Schneider. I mean, Pete Carroll, we know he's getting older, even though he doesn't act it. But this is the draft. This is the most critical draft at such a juncture in the franchise, the history of the franchise of the Seattle Seahawks, where you can't screw it up. You have to hit on 50%. I think is. At minimum, you need to hit on at least half these picks.
And one thing I want to remind our listeners of is that this was based off of a trade proposal from another Locked On host. And you and I agree DK Metcalf's probably not going anywhere. But looking at this, if there was an offer made like the one we got from the Jaguars, from our friend Tony Wiggins, if we would have gotten an offer like that in real life, where you get 3 picks between 33 and 70, and you're already trying to load, you've already got 3 day 3 picks. I mean, that gives you so much flexibility. I would think they would at least consider it. You have to. But this is a mock draft. That is a mock trade. I don't anticipate it's going to happen, but maybe the one with the Saints in the beginning could if the Saints have a player they really want at pick number 9. And that's just going to make this so fun. Can't wait. We got 2 weeks until the 2022 NFL draft, less than 2 weeks until the first team is on the clock in Las Vegas. As always, thanks for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. You can follow me on Twitter at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Nick at Nick Lee 51. Make sure to check out the Locked On Seahawks podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and 5 days a week streaming on YouTube. When we return on Monday, we're getting closer to the real draft. We're going to be taking a look at some more mock drafts from draft experts for a variety of places, including Fox, NFL.com, and ESPN. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks for listening. Go Hawks.